Cinema Classics is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center at the South Campus Gateway, 1550 North High Street. Further details online at gatewayfilmcenter.com.
The award-winning Cinema Classics is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to the shows online at wcbe.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Johnny DiLoretto, and this is Cinema Classics.
Well, everybody knows by now that Philip Seymour Hoffman has died.
Yes.
And talk about a classic.
Yeah.
Maybe 46 years old, but he's a classic.
Probably one of the best actors of his generation.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
Now, although he played in Doubt as a priest,
yeah,
and I liked him very much. And when you can hold your own against Meryl Streep, there must be something about you that's a really good actor.
Mm-hmm.
He played a priest to her nun.
He was a very strong presence. He made interesting choices on, not only in the roles that he took on, but he made interesting choices on screen. And by that I mean the way he read his lines, or where he would pause, or the way he would look at a fellow actor, or just the choices he made within the confines of those roles I thought was very interesting. I think it's what accounted for how people responded to him. Now, I will say this, I think we started to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, we did. We had to stop.
He's a character actor. And it seems to me that Philip Seymour Hoffman specialized in a very certain kind of character. He specialized in somebody who you didn't necessarily want to trust. You couldn't trust these guys normally. He was, he played weaselly, sniveling, conniving, grotesque, pathetic. He did all that really wonderfully well.
And he was so good at what you're talking about that he didn't even have to do much of that with his recent role in The Master, in which he played that kind of guru, that headmaster of that Scientology organization. Yeah. And he played it so straight, but he still had what you call that kind of, are you going to really trust this guy or not?
Right.
And so, yeah, it works that way. His choices were great. For instance, when he won the Oscar for Capote. Yeah. That was a slam dunk. Everybody knew he was going to get it for that, and he did.
Yeah, I think he was just wrong for that part.
Do you?
Yeah, I think he was great in the part. Right. Like his performance was a smart rendering of Capote, but for some reason I always felt like that we were overpraising that performance. And I know that most people will take issue with what I'm going to say, and then I'll qualify what I'm going to say. But he was physically wrong for the part. Truman Capote was a tiny, slight little man.
Right.
And that slightness was key to his persona. When you saw him on the talk show circuit, when you saw him in an interview, his public persona was part and parcel of his very own fey slightness. Yeah. And Philip Seymour Hoffman, no matter how you slice it, is not a slight guy. No, he's a big guy, and I think it held his performance back, because I don't think I ever felt that he was this feather of a guy.
Well, and I was conscious of that too, and I think the camera tried not, in many cases, to show us a full shot of him. Right. There were frequently shots just of his head. So
right, and I think that hurt that movie because close-ups were used in the wrong way. Close-up should be a punctuation mark. It should be. It should delve into the interior of an actor at just the right moment, and I think Capote overuses the close-up because of that reason, but to ill effect.
It's interesting you should say that, because he talks himself about how difficult the role was for him physically. That he really had to kind of wedge himself into that role physically. Yeah. It may have compromised it. It was still so good that I felt,
Yeah. I remember, I can remember seeing Philip Seymour Hoffman for the very first time. I was unaware of who it was until years later, until he started to make a name for himself. But I'll never forget seeing It's Scent of a Woman, right? In which he plays just the really bullying fellow student at the private school. Well. And I remember having a visceral reaction. When I saw that movie, I remember having a visceral reaction to this character. he was repulsive and villainous, and I hated that guy. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that that's who it was, and what a great job. Like I said, he was a master at playing that kind of just the worst type of human being.
I think he brought a tremendous amount of power to a role he played with Tom Hanks in Charlie Wilson's War, and he played a CIA operative. Kind of shabby, which he does very well.
Right.
But more like, you know, a PR guy who does never in front of the camera.
Yeah.
But could tell you exactly what to do it right. He was good at that.
Yeah.
And he played that role. And I don't think that, who is it now these days, that, who's the kind of schlubby actor who's now...
George Clooney. What are you talking about?
No, I can't think. In Moneyball.
Oh, and Moneyball, the schlubby guy. Moneyball? Oh, yeah. He's in,
I know, he's recently...
Joel, what is his name?
He's in Wolf of Wall Street.
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill. So, while Jonah Hill isn't going to be like that, Jonah Hill has struggled physically. He has brought his weight down, but I don't think I think he's back again with some of his weight, because there is that part of him, that persona, that works very well.
Right. Yeah, you can't escape it. You are, as an actor, you're a formula. You know what I mean? You are what your talent is, you are what your physicality is, and you are what the role is.
Sure.
And those three things have to come together in a unique way, especially when your range is limited, and so you specialize in a certain type of character. Of course, Jonah Hill's weight is key to his humor. I mean, we laugh at that, the figure he cuts on screen. And
maybe you're emphasizing the question you would have about the greatness of Philip Seymour Hoffman when you think about what Daniel Day-Lewis does sometimes, what Christian Bale, about changing himself physically, and how that actor, you could say, gee, wow, that's terrific, not just because he's changed his very figure, but because he's infused that persona with himself. And I'm wondering now, you're making me wonder now. Here, Seymour Hoffman was one of my icons, and now, what am I doing? I'm questioning him as a great actor.
No, you shouldn't question him as a great actor. He clearly was a great actor within a certain range, within a certain physical range. Look, you know, actors, now, you want to talk, let's get,
all right,
let's get dicey.
All right.
Okay? Perhaps he wasn't as disciplined as some of these other actors.
Okay.
Okay, if Christian Bale could lose 100 pounds to play the mechanic, and then put on another 80 pounds of muscle to play Batman, and then can change it, you know, can turn into this
American Hustle,
schlubby American Hustle guy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it takes a certain kind of discipline to put yourself into a character, and maybe Philip Seymour Hoffman just didn't have the discipline to transform himself into Truman Capote. Here's the other thing: I don't think we should even be questioning the guy's discipline. He was a drug addict.
I know.
So he clearly had no discipline.
Yeah.
Now I don't want to conflate him being undisciplined with him not being talented.
Although the circumstances may be slightly different, Heath Ledger also assumed this kind of iconic status after he died, after playing the Joker. And if I look at the difference between Philip Seymour Hoffman and Heath Ledger, I think there's a considerable chasm in between those two actors.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
I mean, I think Hoffman is more naturally suited to being a character actor than Heath Ledger.
You're right, and I will say this about Heath Ledger, is that guy was in the middle of a transformation.
Yeah.
And I think what we were witnessing, especially like from Brokeback Mountain on, is I was astonished at what Heath Ledger was doing.
Yes.
Heath Ledger was transforming himself into the kind of actor that Daniel Day-Lewis was.
Yes.
Or is, rather. And Philip Seymour Hoffman has always been in command of his craft. He's always been in these character parts. And Heath Ledger, I think, the tragic loss of Heath Ledger is that what was that guy capable of? And what might have he done? You know.
All right, let's put this in the context of another Oscar winner who is still alive.
Okay.
And still making movies.
That's when people do their best work, by the way.
Robert De Niro.
Okay. Yes, Robert De Niro.
And there's an arc.
Here's a guy. Yeah, here's a guy going backwards.
Yes. I knew you'd say
Right?
that, yeah.
The guy regressing. He's
Yeah.
devolving before our very eyes. Interestingly enough, De Niro and Philip Seymour Hoffman were in a film called Flawless in the early 90s.
Oh, you're good.
De Niro was a bigoted neighbor to this drag queen played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, and of course they come to know and respect each other. And I walked out of that movie.
Okay.
It was so awful.
All right. So in the end, we have the death, unfortunate, considering that he had another 30 years to go of performing who knows what. But Philip Seymour Hoffman has created roles that are memorable. He may not be the greatness of a Christian Bale or a Daniel Day-Lewis or even a Robert De Niro, but he's up there in that
He's
pantheon.
certainly up there. I mean, look, we're all fired up about this guy.
I know.
You know, it's a great loss for